So I'm probably late to the party on this. In fact, I know I am. I mean, we supposedly live in the post-album era, but for me, the album is what makes rock music interesting, and I can't imagine organizing my listening around playlists and singles and a random hodgepodge of things. When you listen to your favorite records, you can see, how much thought the artist put into the sequence of the pieces, the contrast, the variety. I mean, just listen to the first couple of Zeppelin albums, for instance, with these absolute powerhouse openers, followed by something that's as big a contrast as possible. This mixture of surprise and challenge and expectations raised and dodged and finally fulfilled. To me, that's what makes a great record. Take, for example, an album like Queen's A Night at the Opera. What an absolutely astounding range of moods and atmospheres and sound worlds exist on that. Everything from opera to Dixieland jazz. I mean, and just couldn't be more compelling the way in which it progresses. Folks who've been sort of following my guitar exploits know that I've been working hard to write my own material lately. That's one of the really big reasons I started playing again. And I'm getting to the point now where I'm really anxious to start recording some of it. I think I'll initially start by recording sort of a sampler of a few of the different threads of the kinds of music that I like to play and write, with a view to doing some proper albums in due course. And I had an interesting experience this week, which I've had so many times in recent years. One of my favorite recent discovery artists is someone who I've been just listening to voraciously in live performances on YouTube. It's an artist who I'll leave anonymous for the moment, but who I discovered in the last 12 months and have just absolutely enjoyed everything he plays and sings, with all his different groups and combinations. The whole breadth of what he does is just absolutely fascinating. So in thinking about the idea of, what a record is today, what an album is today, I went to listen to a couple of his albums. And, they're brilliant songs, and he's a brilliant musician, but all of that magic and immediacy and individuality that comes across so powerfully in his live stuff is just, sadly, for me, completely missing in the records. And it's happened to me so many times where I've discovered an artist through a live performance clip and then gone to listen to them on their record, only to find out that, they just sound like another well-produced modern act. How has recording become this instrument of sameness, of uniformity, of conformity? It's very discouraging, because you know that these artists have something special if you know them from outside the world of Pro Tools. And we know, for instance, that modern digital technology, even streaming with its flaws of quality and fairness and all that, can still deliver to us a listening experience of Abbey Road or Physical Graffiti, which captures the bulk of the individuality of those performances. Just because something is digital doesn't have to mean that it's cold or characterless or bland or commercial sounding. And yet, even in the more sort of connoisseur's realm of music for musicians, so many records, when they're finally made, the end product seems not to have captured the personality of the artists, or to really have a sound world for each song that is appropriate to the song. I wonder sometimes if the modern idea of mastering has changed from what it used to be, which was to make sure that the recording itself was going to work on a vinyl pressing in the way that it should be accurately represented, into something completely different, which is to sort of pour a uniform sauce of sound and polish over the whole thing, so that all 10 or 15 tracks on the record really sound of a piece. It sounds not unreasonable when people talk that way, but I mean, my favorite records, all the tracks sound different, sound like different spaces. I mean, you look at something like When the Levee Breaks, Zeppelin. Famously, John Bonham recorded his drums for that in a stairwell to get that absolutely enormous sound, and the production techniques that Jimmy Page used to get different guitar sounds are fascinating and really, really creative. And of course, a lot of Zeppelin recordings sound like one-take wonders, really, with mistakes and out-of-tune singing and playing, all of that, loose ends, but there's an energy to it that, is like live music and that endures over dozens or hundreds of listens. Everyone these days says, you've got to be perfect to compete in the digital marketplace. But what is exciting about a flawless recording? What energy does it create? What interest does it generate? How do you stand out from all the other manufactured music out there? And the mere fact that you can play and sing your ass off and write great songs, if you just end up sounding like another well-crafted piece of modern pop rock, then what is that for? What is the practicing for? I mean, at the end of the day, one thing we know about modern recording techniques is that they can make the incompetent sound flawless. So what's the point of all the practice, of all the virtuosity, of all the improvisational chops, if that's not showing up on your records? So I've been thinking a lot about this because, at one point I was thinking, I know what I need to do to get ready for my record. I need to go listen to a whole bunch of the new bands that I've fallen in love with since I started listening to rock and roll again, and listen to their records beginning to end and get a sense of, what a record is today, what kind of journey people are going on, what kind of sounds people are experimenting with. And people are still experimenting with fascinating sounds. It's just that once they've been through the whole process, there's a kind of digital blandness that attaches to the whole thing that's really hard to get past. And I don't really understand why. I talk to a lot of really good producers and engineers and musicians, and they're all aware of this. No one is, unconscious of the fact that, the digital recording medium tends to drive things in this way. But nevertheless, it continues. And especially the example I cited at the beginning of this, I was just stunned that an artist whose live personality is all about immediacy and authenticity and spontaneity would work so hard, and I know he works really hard. I know he's a complete workaholic in the studio to put together a recording that to me just has no spontaneity, no immediacy, no individuality at all, and that in fact kind of takes songs that are really emotionally immediate and gripping and somehow distances the listener emotionally from what's going on. So watch this space. I don't know the answer. I'd be curious to know your thoughts, and thoughts beyond just modern music sucks, because there's so many great musicians out there these days. They're not getting heard, and also I think they're struggling to figure out how to reconcile our expectations of what modern product should sound like and who they are. And maybe we need to encourage artists to put out material that breaks from the crowd a little bit more. Maybe we need more live albums. Maybe we don't need albums anymore. Maybe we need albums that are really self-consciously curated from beginning to end, to encourage people not to just, pick and choose and dabble in playlist and excerpt things, but to go on a journey with the songwriter. And of course, not everyone will, but if there's one comfort in the modern musical world, and there's not many to be honest, it's that you can reach a relatively small proportion of today's total listening audience and still be reaching a lot of people who can be very passionate and deeply affected by your work and what you have to say. But that connection only really has meaning if you're reaching them as you, the artist, with your personality and your playing and your vision for why we're here. We all know McDonald's can replicate burgers that are one after the other more or less exactly the same by the tens of millions every day. Replicating, quote, perfection is not the job of an artist. Replicating is not the job of an artist. Imagining, creating, delivering, communicating, that's what makes music worthwhile. That's what humans can do with music that AI and computers and sampling can't. So a call to action for all of you out there, keep it real, folks. Let's see what we can do to reimagine the modern album with flaws and flakeouts and surprises and moments of magic and humor, and maybe we'll find some new listeners in the process. Rock on, everyone. Thanks for listening.